Call the meeting to order. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I invite you to join us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Strand?
Here.
Garrick?
Here.
Grinberg?
Here.
Pepcorn?
Here.
Mahoney?
Here. Since we have a Judge Dawson at the in his robe and ready to go, I think we'll do our swearing in of the two candidates that won and the mayor.
I, and state your name, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of North Dakota, and the Home Rule Charter of the City of Fargo, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the Office of Commissioner according to the best of my ability. So help me God. Mayor Mahoney, if I could ask you to raise your right hand, please. I, state your name,
I, Tim Mahoney,
do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of North Dakota,
the Constitution of the State of North Dakota,
and the Home Rule Charter of the City of Fargo,
and the Home Rule Charter of the City of Fargo,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the Office of Mayor
and I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of mayor
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
So help me God.
Very good. The four firefighters have completed their initial training with the fire department and received shift assignments. Over the next 8 months, they will complete their additional training and testing. Members of the fire department also played an integral role in providing for the safety of people in attendance at the rally held by President Trump last week. They responded to multiple calls for heat-related emergencies, and they also ensured that the building capacity ratings were maintained. It's rumored that Chief Dirksen almost got a call from President Trump because he wanted to fit 20,000 people in a 6,000 people area. Congratulations to Battalion Chief Greg Nelson, who has been promoted to Assistant Chief. Nelson also received his diploma as a graduate of the National Fire Academy's Executive Fire Officer Program last week. Congratulations. The Mayor's Blue Ribbon and Commission on Addiction hosted a take-back event on Tuesday, June 19th. There were 110 participants dropping off 143 pounds of medications. Take-back events allow area residents to dispose of unused and unwanted over-the-counter prescription medicines, which helps protect the environment and keeps those drugs off the street. A lot of people who get introduced to opioids are from pharmaceutical drugs that are in the home. Library. The library has limited fines on all children's materials. This change increases access to books and materials for children and makes it easier for children to continue to check out books and read. For many, overdue fines and late fees are a barrier that stops children and families from accessing and benefiting the resources the library offers. The library hopes this initiative increases access to books and reading, boosts literacy, and removes barriers for all children in Fargo. Great idea. The library's annual summer reading program continues, and some program highlights during the next couple of weeks will include a visit from the Red River Zoo staff and some of their animal ambassadors, a vinyl record care workshop, a Pokemon party, a silent reading party for grown-ups at Hodo's Sky Prairie Rooftop, and cupcake awards decorating sessions. Sounds like a variety of things to do for adults and children. Police. When President Trump was in Fargo last week, the Fargo Police Department worked with the Secret Service and other agencies to provide security. Chief Todd said these visits are exciting and challenging at the same time, but having the President of the United States visit Fargo is a big deal, and the police take a lot of pride knowing their hard work made everything flow seamlessly. Chief Todd also has been working the last 3 years on implementing a mind, body, soul wellness philosophy at the police department, not only for the organization, but for the individual as well. He said wellness throughout the department is a priority, and as police officers, the community has expectations that they can perform the physical aspect of their jobs in emergency situations. Taking that in mind, he took a week's vacation to help his body get back in shape. In regards to President Trump's visit, I would like to acknowledge the city employees' planning and proactive approach to managing overtime costs by moving shifts and rearranging schedules throughout without impacting the budget. According to Chief Todd, the impact of the police department's budget was minimal, with overtime pay of $1,127. There have been many public accolades for the police and other law enforcement agencies, and even the Secret Service remarked to Chief Todd that the motorcade operation was pristine and done so well. Public Works helped as well as fire and the police on this event. He also shared with Chief Todd that he was relieved to hear that they were coming to Fargo because we are great to work with and know we are doing great compared to some other cities they visit. The cooperation throughout the community is outstanding, and everybody works together to make it go very smooth. Senator Hoeven, Congressman Kramer, Governor Burgum, and former Governor Schaefer, myself, and even President Trump thank the Fargo Police Department and all the assisting law enforcement agencies for a job well done. And rumor is he had so much fun he might come back again, so good. So, is there a motion to approve the order of agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Passed. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the June 18th, 2018 regular meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Pipcorn, Grinberg. Any changes? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda items 1 through 29, moving item 1D from the consent agenda to the end of the regular agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Strand Gehring. Roll call vote, please.
Strand,
Yes.
Garrick,
Yes.
Grinberg,
Aye.
Pepcorn,
Aye.
Mahoney.
Aye. Regular agenda, recommendation by City Administrator Bruce Grubb for the appointment of the city engineer, to be explained by Bruce Grubb.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. One of the great perks about being a city administrator is you get to come up here at times like these. As you probably are aware, in advance of Mark Bittner's recent retirement, we advertised for the position of city engineer in the city of Fargo, and it was a national search. We utilized several publications, websites, professional organizations, the type of things that you typically do. By way of example, some of those, obviously the City of Fargo website, we were posted, utilized the Forum, our official local newspaper, but also Jobs HQ, Job Service North Dakota, the Minnesota League of Cities, American Public Works Association. I didn't get them all, but quite a few. The advertisement period was for 1 month, and that closed on May 18th. We received a total of 9 applications in response to the advertisement. So a selection committee was formed that included a cross-section of departmental representation. It included myself and Mike Redlinger representing administration, Ben Dow representing Public Works, Terry Ludlam was representing utilities, Mark Williams representing planning, and Tom Knockmoose representing the engineering department. So each of the committee members independently reviewed each of the applications and ranked those applications, and then based on that process, 2 were ultimately selected for follow-up interviews. And we conducted those interviews on Friday, June 15th. And then the committee, again, ranked each of the interview responses to questions, and at the end of that, we aggregated the scores, and the unanimous selection that we're bringing forward to you tonight is recommending Brenda Derrig to be hired as the next city engineer for the city of Fargo. So it's my pleasure to be able to offer that recommendation tonight, and that's forward forwarded for your consideration.
Can I have a motion for this recommendation, please?
I'll make a motion to appoint Brenda Derrig to the position of city engineer.
Second.
Any comments? Brenda, we want to congratulate you for taking this post, and I think we can give her a round of applause for the nice
She
work
hasn't
she's been
passed yet.
doing with the engineering.
We got a vote.
Roll call vote. I'm trying to help you.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Grinberg?
Aye.
Strand?
Yes.
Garrick?
Yes.
Mahoney?
Aye.
Thank you.
Discussion regarding the creation of the Special Assessments Task Force. This has been talked about before. Commissioner Grinberg wants to make some comments.
Well, I know that we've all had an interest in this topic. Commissioner Gehrig, for one, for sure, with his concerns. Based on our decisions a few weeks ago to change the distribution formula of payments, I think there's a broader discussion that be had here with stakeholders in the community to review the current statute and the manner how cities go about their business with development, whether that's in town or interior redevelopment or greenfields. And so the idea was to put together discussion tonight to get ideas out on the table, to come back with a more concrete plan for a timeline, a scope of work, membership, on a committee that, at least from my perspective, would be completed with its work by the end of the year.
Any other discussion?
Who's going to put together the proposal?
As a thought was, oftentimes the mayor will appoint some people. I know you have particular interest in it, and Commissioner Grinberg has volunteered. We usually don't have more than 2 commissioners on it. What I'd like to do is work with the 3 of you, basically appointing members to it with the staff as well.
Okay. And to Tony's point, I guess, a timeline and an outline, I think, would be prudent. And I guess my direct question is, are you going to create that outline, the timeline? Here, we're going to point this way, we're going to have this many meetings, and then go forward that way, like we have in the
Just like we did with
past?
the task force on election. Yep.
Sounds good.
Yep. Commissioner Strand.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm glad you mentioned the task force on elections, Commissioner Grinberg, because I believe that it's important to engage the citizenry and to have a diverse set of voices at the table. So my desire is that, all of us commissioners have an interest in this. It's not just a couple. And if nothing else, we need to have voices at the table that we can put there. So I'm comfortable with the approach you're using, but my recommendation is that each of us has the ability either to sit on the board itself or to appoint people to it on the task force.
And typically what we'd have is an open meeting. Any commissioner or mayor could come into the room and be part of it. But typically, as far as a formal committee, we just have 2 because then it's not a formal opinion at that time, John. So it should be that everybody's allowed in there. I guess to the format you're talking about, perhaps you 2 could get together a little bit and we could get some outline of what we want to do, similar to other task force we've had, and bring back a recommended committee, if that'd be okay with the commission.
Sounds good to me.
So if that's okay, do we need a motion on that, or probably should proceed with one, or to form the committee? And yeah. So I would look for a motion.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? And just so people understand, what we have passed in the past is the policy 2013. That's basically what we're operating by right now. There's a lot of different things that move every time you do something, and you'll find that tonight with the engineering's discussion, because we'll see how much money this costs us to do that and how it affects the specials in the community, sometimes up, sometimes down. But that's the policy we're operating on right now, and if we're going to make major changes, that should come out of the committee. The committee should come back with a new policy for us to look at. And I think with the diversity of the 2 commissioners, we should get some good discussion and a lot of things that will be brought forth to us. But present rules are we're following present policy that we have. So just so people understand that. So roll call vote, please.
Grinberg?
Aye.
Garrick?
Yes.
Strand?
Yes.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Mahoney?
Aye. recommendation from the Special Assessment Policy Adjustment. The Commission had asked us when we went back to this to look at what do the changes mean when you go from the 2015 back to the 2013. And the Engineering Department has prepared a presentation for that. And it's also going to tell us what we may have to do to make adjustments, and we may have to decrease our CIP, and we may have to do some different things as far as funding. So Brenda Daring gets the first task of her new job.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. I sent out the memo talking about what we found as we broke down all those projects, and I'd just like to highlight a few of those things through the presentation. So like I stated in the memo, we had 136 projects, and out of those projects, we reevaluated the special assessments on 38 of them. So most of these projects were either water main replacement and street rehabilitation, or they were just water main, just street rehab, traffic, or concrete spot repair. And so of those 38 projects, 35 of those impacted the special assessments and then the amount also of what the city was putting in on the project. The other 3 projects listed in front of you, those were projects where the capped costs were never met, and so they may have impacted the special assessment, but not the City of Fargo monies that went into them. So from those 38 projects, we looked at 35 projects to look at what is the impact of the city funding going back to that 2013 infrastructure funding policy. And of those 35 projects, 11 of those projects have already been bonded, and 24 of those projects are in progress. And so we've got about $3.5 million that have been bonded and almost $10 million that are in progress. Of those 11 projects that are bonded, about $300,000 have special assessments that were paid by 552 homeowners. And then the other $730,000 are specials that are committed to the bond. And so the city would need to look at that, credit the about 1,900 homeowners, the difference, so the difference between the 2016 and the 2013 policy, and then we would have to look at how do we handle that on the bond repayment. And then the $2.5 million remaining has been certified and bonded, but has not gone through the city commission approval yet. And so we would have to look at that difference. So of the about the 9.9 million, the 24 projects that are in progress, that will be the shortfall. And on the interim, what we're looking at and working with the finance director is going into the sales tax fund, the street sales tax fund, to fund that in the interim. In reviewing our 2019 capital improvement plan, I had attached that with the memo. If we would cut out our water main replacement projects for 1 year, so that would mean not doing any water main replacement projects next year, we could put that $8.5 million back in there. It would be a little short of the 9.9 million, but we would have to make that adjustment then, moving forward. And we could make that by just doing that in 1 year. We still feel in the engineering department that that's, we need to keep doing the water main replacement projects, but that would help us get caught back up, and then we could start back in the following year.
And by that time, we'd have a new policy as well.
Correct.
Yeah.
That would also give us time to get a new policy in, and it gives us time, we have a lot of goals in engineering, and it gives us time to look at some of those goals and looking to do a multiple year capital improvement plan that's a little fluid, and so we can work on things that help with our public relations also. The next 2 slides are just the spreadsheet that I had sent to you guys. in regards to what you would look at for monies with the water main replacement projects in there for 2019 and what we would be looking at if we took them out. So we lose about $1 million in engineering and admin fees, but we gain that $8.5 million. So there would be an $8.7 million reduction in construction costs, $2.8 million reduction in special assessments, and then an $8.5 million about reduction in the city funds. So as Dan reviewed, and his department reviewed all of the projects under the new policy, there are some unfortunate unintended outcomes with the new policy. And so what we did find is our arterial roadways, if they did not hit the capped cost in the 2016 policy, when we resorted back to the 2013 policy, that decreased the front foot cost, which then increased minimally the side benefit cost. So we did see some increases. Some we saw about 100 to 150. The most we maybe saw was about 500 on those added side benefit. So there are some assessments that did go up and not down. And so we wanted to make sure that we brought those to your attention so that you guys can get the full picture of going back to 2013, some of the things that have occurred as we reviewed them. Another project is our Great Northern Drive project. I'm going to go back. That's the project where Excel is paying for half of the cost because we're relocating the storm sewer to put their transmission line in. And so they are paying half of the road cost. And when we resorted back to the 2013 policy, we also saw some increased costs there. So one of the examples is the 64th Avenue South project. That's a brand new roadway project. The same total amount was special assessed, but with the change in the policy, it increased the cost for single family, but it decreased the cost for multifamily and commercially zoned properties. So on this sheet, we put some examples of the previous policy to the current policy. And so as you can see, the front foot cost in the 2016 policy on the front foot cost, we had single family, and we took those costs times a multiplier of 2 to get the multifamily and by 2.5 to get the commercial. When we go back to the 2013 policy, the multifamily and commercial are not spent, their front foot costs aren't as much, and so those costs still have to be spread around. And so what you're seeing as we spread those throughout the district, some of those costs then went up. And so that's what we're finding. So they're still all under the capped cost, but they did make some adjustment and some of them did go upward.
And so the idea of the old policy was actually to add more to commercial and to multifamily, but when we revert to the old policy, then we go back to more what we had. So on this, the commercials do a little bit better and the single family goes up a bit.
Correct. In regards to the project I mentioned on Great Northern Drive, the previous policy, Excel is paying for half of the roadway because we relocated the storm sewer. And under the 2016 policy, what we did is it's a 50-50 split. So we took that half of the road and did a 50-50 split, which would be about 25% for them and then 25% for us. Under the 2013 policy, they do now have a capped cost on the local road, which is $188, and so the actual amount assessed will be about $184. So they're still under their capped costs, but over what we originally had anticipated. So in my memo on the last paragraph, I worked with our finance director on a recommended motion. I did try and bullet pointed here. I know it was a very long sentence in the paragraph form, so I did try and bullet point it here as far as each of the approvals, and I would entertain any questions you would have also.
Mr. Chairman, I have a
Mr.
question.
Pepcorn.
So Brenda, can you talk, what will happen with those water main replacements? Because that concerns me, that if we delay everything for 1 year, what is going to be your strategy then for catching back up, or how will that just be a lag?
That will just be a lag. Because there's only so many we can do a year. And last year's a good example. We just did too many at once in the downtown area. And especially since we are doing a lot in the downtown area, we really have to strategically lay those out and plan which ones we do and when.
Can I have one more follow-up? So the key, the water main replacement, when we have a street torn up, that's the time to do it, isn't it?
Correct.
So that basically, we're not going to be doing that, and that's the smart thing to do, so we're not going to be doing the smart thing.
Well, so what I would tell you though is we won't do any ripping up of streets next year then. If we take out the water main replacement section, we wouldn't do any water plate replacement or street removals in that area.
Can I just give you my editorial opinion? That we had a mayor a long time ago that delayed maintaining the underground for a while, and it ends up costing us way more later. And so if there's any way that we can figure out to, even if we reduce it, but still continue, I would encourage that, because I just think that at some point, you're gonna have to pay the piper. So I don't know.
Well, we just have a shortfall now, so we have to address that. But one of the issues you can address, Brenda, at one time, we had quite a few water main breaks.
Right.
That has come down to almost a consistent value every year, 40 to 50 a year.
Yeah, so right now we're under 40 a year, and before we were at 130. You know, Commissioner Pepcorn, I share your concern. I mean, it's a hard thing to swallow. We understand we have a shortfall. Hopefully, we can be a little bit flexible in that too, because my concern even happens in some of these redevelopment projects we're seeing, is making sure that we don't have another issue like we did in the Roberts area, and that we can kind of continue to work, so we're not coming in after something opens up. So.
Any other discussion? Good work. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Commissioner Strand, is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
Mayor, if I might.
Can I ask? Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. You know, I just would like to chime in here a little bit about the significance of this process that we're in. You know, a lot of us are hearing from people out there about specials and concerns, and we've been hearing it for a few years now. But you know, I've had one person tell me, "Well, when are you going to do something?" And my response was, "Well, this is rather sweeping already," and it is. What the commission did and embarked upon, right, you know, this last few months is really, really significant. And it's going to challenge all of us as a community. We are on the right path for revisiting this policy relative to the impacts of the citizens. But where this is going to put us is it's going to stress our budget immensely. And it's going to spread the costs across everybody's pocketbooks. You know, so I hope all of the people out there give us their best thinking, participate in this process, help us go for the best proposals going forward that we can for the long haul. But when you have a $13+ million hit on your budget and delays in your capital improvement projects, these are really significant decisions. And we did deliver to address the concerns of the citizens, but we're not done figuring all this out at all, and we're going to need everybody's best input.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Pipgren.
Brenda, can I ask you, so what will happen with that XL project? Because they've already started with that, and we basically made a commitment, and now we're not, are we going to approach them and see if they're?
So the numbers, the almost 10 million, that includes all the projects. We have already bid out everything for this year. And so that 10 million includes this year's shortfall.
Okay.
So everything's, when we resorted back, we had all of our projects already bid out and committed.
The water project is next year, so you're just delaying next year's build. We have not bid that out, so that's why we can do that.
Okay, thank you.
So we had to cut back on the CIP plan. Any other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Strand,
Yes.
Garrick.
Yes.
Grinberg,
Aye.
Pepcorn.
Aye.
Mahoney.
Aye. Thank you very much. Good job, team. I know you spent a lot of time on this one. Public hearings, we're going to put 33A and B together. Steve Sprague to explain. It's a special assessment list for a variety of projects.
That's correct, Mayor. And the reason we're combining A and B, they're both just special assessments. The A one was separated because it was originally started back in October of 2017, and then we pushed it out for a ways. And then with the B, we originally had the hearing scheduled for early June, and then we've delayed it so we could work through the presentation that Brenda just gave. What I wanted to just say is this is the final step of the assessment process. Through this process, the projects were created, districts were established, the size and shape of the districts that we are going to be assessing, the boundaries. The projects were then constructed and inspected utilizing city staff or outside consulting engineers. Final costs then were assembled and prepared and certified. All of that was presented to the Special Assessment Commission. They determined the benefit of each of the different projects. Protests were heard at the Special Assessment Commission. And so tonight before you, there are 20 projects that are being presented with a total assessments of $21 million.
And last commission meeting, we had an open discussion, public discussion, but we're going to open it up again tonight if somebody
That's
wants to
correct.
comment
Yep.
on item A, B in the special assessments. Is there anyone present who wishes to speak their assessment list? Is there anyone present who wishes to speak? Good evening.
Let's wait. My name is Sean Scott. Fargoan. I say Fargonian, it's Fargoans. I've been here in this community for about 5.5 years. From prison, $127 check. But in my military background, father an Air Force veteran, me Marine, all over the world. Japan, Hawaii, West Germany. I'm a Grand Forks Central Redskin. Also a graduate of Roosevelt, went back for a second chance. And I love Fargo. I never thought I would say that. I left here when I was 19 years old. I told my mother that Marine Corps called me at Hardee's. You ready to go? I left. Mom, I'm not coming back. It's too flat, too cold, too boring. I want to see the world. I came to Fargo and I met the best people I've ever met of all the continents and countries I've visited. I have friends who are military veterans who are police officers. I have friends in this community who are police officers. Some of these officers aren't my friends. For some reason, I have evidence of blatant perjury, blatant mistreatment, blatant outright lies. The police chief, Todd, never met him, called him 5 times. So the evidence is in the police station. The videos will exonerate me from the crimes, but I had not time to get them, sir. I was in jail for being assaulted by drug abusers at the police I didn't care about. So I figured it's time to enter some new business. I love my community, and I intend to be part of this community. They're here, there, or right here. I am Fargonian. Fargoan, Fargonian, Negro. I love it. It sounds royal. I love my people and my community. I want to introduce myself. That's it. The gentleman I talked to when I was here last time to get a dog park in the Golden Ridge area. On my block, about 8 dogs and 6 houses. Maybe you have to walk here and there to get a dog out, have fun. But I've been arrested many times or yelled at for having my dog off a leash in this community, and I want some changes. Being that I'm in a minority presence, I feel that we should have more of a minority presence here, there, right there. So I'm going to call in and schedule something so I have my notes written, taken care of, and introduce myself further. Thank you, sir. Ma'am.
Is there anyone else who wants to speak about their assessment?
Hi, Hi, I'm Steve Ani, and I'm representing MJ Investments and the owner of that. I'm not an attorney. And BR16B, I've been a constant complainer about how it was put together. It's a project for moving water and sewer from downtown north to the sewer system, and it just doesn't even make sense for that small district, the way it was established, the way the assessment committee put it together. It does not make sense. Everybody should participate in that project, including I know the water mains and all that had federal grants associated with it. To me, that makes no difference. You needed to move water and sewer north because Fargo's growing, and that's wonderful. It's good for everybody. But to have that district that small is unbelievable. And the process that was put together for designation of costs, the first cost to my client was $350,000. It only turned out to be $157,000. Now with your change, we're going to get a measly $2,000 decrease. But something's not right in this process, and I'm glad to hear that you're having a task force to study it, because these districts are not large enough. That whole main avenue going north, including all of downtown city, should have been part of this assessment, not just that small district.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak? If not, we'll close public hearing. Brenda, you want to comment to the assessment district on that, or Dan, who do you want to comment to that? I think you guys looked into it.
I'm probably going to let Dan talk on it.
There are a couple of particulars
Yeah.
about that project that were different.
So that one is in regards to the new sanitary sewer force main that is taking the sewer up north. The sanitary sewer force main was completely covered by the grant for that work. And any sewer, water, which are all local cost, rehabilitation, and the street were then assessed according to our policy, the 2013, and reassessed at the 2013 policy, if you want to add.
So if we want, the policy committee can look at his complaint and see if there's any different way of doing it. But right now, it's been assessed and done.
Correct, and it's a local road, so it was assessed as a local road.
Okay.
And so any additional costs due to the infrastructure with the force main was paid by the grant and was not special assessed.
Okay. Thank you. Do I have a motion for A and B?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion? Commissioner Garrick?
Yeah, so just reiterating the point I made last meeting, the reason I'll be voting no is I think the 1% is still too high, and we've heard from people that they want to see that moving on that as well. I think it's something easy we could do to show good faith while we move into this process with the task force, so that's the reason I'll be voting no.
Mr. Strand?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm very much in a similar sentiment as Commissioner Gehrig with regard to the discussion about the 1% fee, the interest rate over and above the other fees charged, but I'm not inclined to do that now. My sense is that I'd rather see us address the policy in the bigger picture relative to other incorporated changes that will be considered and implemented. And my druthers right now would be to reduce that 1%, but I don't want to misstep on that. I'd rather see the end result of where we all land as a group for the greater public good. And if nothing else, we can revisit those fees later on. But I'm of the same mindset, but I wouldn't want to just arbitrarily decide, well, let's reduce it to 0.5%, or let's reduce it to 0.75% without knowing the implications of that and the consequences of that, intended or not. So I'm looking forward to us studying this along with all the other topics, deferrals and arterial routes and the various aspects of specials, but I'm just not inclined to make this decision arbitrarily today. me
I
personally.
can have Ken Costin, he came back special for this meeting tonight. Thank you, Ken, for doing that. We also have our bond counsel here as well. Do you want to just make a comment to that? I think you've talked about a few things, and you've talked to our bond counsel as well about the 1%.
Yes, I would be happy to. Thank you for the ability to speak tonight. We have done some research on this issue. We've done some market surveys in Minnesota and North Dakota. We have that data ready for you, and I would really appreciate it if we could take it up, as Commissioner Strand said, as a discussion item, because there's a lot of details behind the covers of that 1%. And I think it's really important that you all understand what the purpose of it is, what it serves, how it flows into the debt service fund, and how it responds to various economic events that may occur during the life cycle of the bond. So we would appreciate your support. One of the next items on there is to actually issue bonds. You have just approved the special assessments by which these bonds are funded, and so all of that needs to be linked together as we hit a bond sale in the market. So with that in mind, we fully are ready, and we're ready to discuss, and we'd be happy to do whatever due diligence you wish to do on the 1% issue.
But Kent, on the $43 million worth of bonds you're doing today, there's like the bank has an origin fee for your mortgage. On this particular bond, you have to put some money up front as the time you get the bond, almost $700,000 as I see it when we were reviewing your documents. So it's just like the bank, you have to have some money up front to do that. That doesn't come out of the general fund, that comes out of your specials fund, does it not?
Yes, that's correct. The closing costs on a bond issue are significant. There's underwriter's discount, there's a legal team, there's Moody's that rates our bonds, there's a series of professionals that bring this to market, and those costs are cash flowed, if you will, through the debt service fund over time, and those costs are not allocated to special assessments in the bill process. North Dakota Century Code does allow, if we so choose, that we could charge those closing costs to the property owners. We just, as a matter of practice over the years, have not wanted to do that because we feel as though that there is ample money within the fund to cover those closing costs. So just as our policies are written, it's more lenient, if you will, to the homeowner than the current Century Code allows. And I'm aware of other communities nearby and farther in North Dakota that actually do code out those closing costs to the property owners, so they're paying those closing costs as well. So it's a decision that you have to make as you do the deal, and we think we're positioned in a favorable status with the homeowners on that part of the deal.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
This will be one of the topics of our meeting, of our task force. So.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Grinberg?
Aye.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Strand?
Yes.
Garrick?
No.
Mahoney?
Aye. Renaissance Zone projects. Nicole Crutchfield's going to come up.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. We have, let's see, a number of items in front of you tonight, 7 items. And I know we've taken these in different ways in the past. If you want, I can talk through kind of project by project. 5 of them are leases within the an existing Renaissance project already approved. And so I'll start with that. So the first one is 247 Robert Street North. And that is a lease for a restaurant in the what we know as the Dillard Tract. And leases are reviewed and approved by staff and brought forward to you. They do not need to go in front of the Renaissance Zone Authority as a lease project. Staff is recommending approval, and look forward to any questions you might have.
Does the commission want to vote on each one or 7 all at once?
Doesn't matter.
All of them are fine. All of them are fine with me.
Let's go through all of them, then we can
Okay.
vote at the end.
I'm saying, put them together is fine with me.
So this item is in front of, and maybe we can do the leases and then the actual projects, because those have different processes, if you will. So the first 5 are leases. So the second lease is 1631 Hospitality LLC, and it's 635 Second Avenue North. We know this as the Roberts Commons. And so this is a lease that will go into an existing Renaissance Zone project. Staff is recommending approval there. And then the next one is 615 Second Avenue North, also known as Roberts Commons, and we have a lease going in there that staff recommends approval on. Next is the Riverview Family Dental, 321 4th Street North. This is where our assessor's office is, and so the Renaissance Zone project was approved recently by you, and so these are two leases that are going in. One is a dental office and one is a yoga office, or yoga studio. And so with those, that summarizes all 5 of the leases, and be glad to open comment for those.
So we'll open public discussion on that. Is there anyone who wants to speak to these Renaissance zones or projects? Looks like we got a lot of stuff going on downtown. Is there anyone who wishes to speak? So we'll close that on those 5 projects. Why don't you do the last 2 and then we can vote.
The last 2 are actual projects where we're talking about major building construction. And so those do go in front of the Renaissance Zone Authority. They did meet last week and recommended approval unanimously on this. And so this is 109, 111 Broadway North, and this is a significant reconstruction and rehabilitation in those projects. They both received high favorable reviews from the staff scoring system as well as from the Renaissance Zone Authority. And then the next item, and so this is an example of, it's known as the Hancock Building, and you'll recognize this facade where Swanson's Health is in the ground floor right now. And then the next project is 502, 506 Broadway North. And so this was reviewed as well by the Renaissance Zone Authority. And it was a little confusing aspect of this is that this was gone in front for a city commission in January as a Renaissance Zone project, but that was actually withdrawn and went away. So this is a different Renaissance Zone Authority project in front of you tonight. And so staff and the Renaissance Zone Authority both recommended approval. And that's it, picture of the rendering.
Is there anyone present who wishes to speak in regard to these building projects? Is there anyone present who wishes to speak? If not, we'd hold a closed public hearing. Can I have a motion for Renaissance Zone projects 1 through 7?
This would be a jumbo motion, so moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Commissioner Stratt.
Thank you, Mayor. Commissioner Grinberg, maybe you can answer this, and it's a little on topic, kind of not, but if the legislature revisits the topic again of Renaissance zones, is their biggest concern the income aspect of this, the income tax deferral, or what's your sense of that from the Bismarck's debates perspective?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Strand, that's a great question. I don't know if I have an exact answer, but last session, every bill was scrutinized 3 times over because of the fiscal constraints of the state. So, you know, what happened in the past might not be the concern of the future, but, you know, I think in the case of the City of Fargo, we've provided sound data and value of, you know, what has transpired over the 20 years. So it's, you know, I think largely the fiscal side was because of the budget.
Mr. Grinberg, would you say the Renaissance Zone's been successful in the City of Fargo?
Absolutely.
That's the problem. It's a successful program. Do we need it or not need it? And we still have growth going on. So it's a good question, John.
The increase in taxable valuation over 20 years is that, you know, just indisputable. I mean, what it's done.
And my record shows I'm a real supporter of Renaissance zones also. I think the track record speaks for itself, especially if you're downtown Fargo and see the impact. But that income aspect of it is something that I'm trying to learn more about, and I'm guessing that'll come under scrutiny again.
Any other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Grinberg?
Aye.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Strand?
Yes.
Gehrig?
No.
Mahoney?
Aye. Item D, Urban Plains, a zoning change and first reading of rezoning ordinance. Donald Crest to explain.
Good evening, Commissioners. Donald Kress from the Department of Planning and Development. As the mayor stated, item 33D is a zoning change for a number of properties in the urban plains area. They are outlined in black here. That address list is maybe a little small for you to see, but they're all outlined in black here. And these are all under the same ownership here. You can see the zoning is a number of different zones here, which includes limited commercial, general commercial, multi-dwelling residential, and public and institutional, as shown on our zoning map. It is not the zoning, excuse me, the zoning itself that's actually being changed. It is the conditional overlay that applies to all these properties. The applications or modifications are proposed by the applicant, and they are intended to allow greater flexibility of design for future development of vacant properties within the urban plains development area. Proposed modifications are to building form and style with the recesses and projections, facade features, building materials, and pedestrian connectivity. And this is a summary of the proposed modifications. This is just an excerpt from your staff report. You have the same information there. And also in your staff report, which was prepared by Megan Elshog on our staff, there is a rather detailed history of the zoning ordinances and conditional overlays in the urban plains area. Again, this is only a modification of the conditional overlays. There is no platting or change of lot lines or change of density that will result from these changes. The revised conditional overlay ordinance prepared by the City Attorney's Office is included in your packet. The applicants, Brian Pattengale of Houston Engineering and Austin Morris of Enclave Development, are with us this evening and may wish to address the Commission. The recommendation for approval is stated in your staff report and shown on the screen. This concludes staff's presentation. Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you, Donald. Is there anybody present who wishes to speak to this new zoning and conditional overlay? Anybody wishing to speak?
Austin Morris, Enclave Development. Primarily the changes related to, we're developing a lot of different locations within this, and our the landowner within this development area, Urban Plains, as we've developed more and more of this property, the challenges that we've faced related to the design restrictions that were put in place within the original corridor overlay were simply outdated based on the use that we're proposing for certain areas, as well as the material selections. As we pursued, especially uptown in Maine along Veterans, which is a lifestyle center that'll span from Veterans and 26th Avenue south all the way down to 32nd Avenue, and then also wrap around the Shields Arena on 32nd Avenue with pedestrian connectivity, walkable Main Street feel, much like a downtown recreated in a suburban environment. Essentially, when we went forward with the designs for the mixed-use buildings, we ran into constraints related to what is an architectural metal panel and what was drafted within the corridor overlay from a material standpoint, and there's a number of different things within it that were funny, but we couldn't use product types that didn't exist 15 years ago when it was originally drafted based on that language of architectural metal panel, even though the product type we're trying to pursue on a number of these buildings is the same product used on City Hall. So it's like a architectural rain screen, very expensive product, nice looking product, and it's the big metal panels you see on high-end car dealerships, high-end offices, and City Hall. So that's one product type that we wouldn't be allowed to use in any form above a certain percentage based on the language considered it an architectural metal panel. So the proposed language changes, gives us more flexibility to still use materials that planning and us, we probably worked for 2 months with the planning department to ensure they'd be on board with what changes we're making and that we're not making anything inferior or anything that would harm the corridor overlay or make any neighbors near us that had to follow the corridor overlay in the past frustrated that we somehow got by with something that was maybe less than intended. So working with planning staff, we came together on some different language that updates the original corridor overlay language requirements and simply brings it up to speed with what we're doing in mixed use environments, retail, and office.
So you're happy with all the changes, Austin?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? Joe, I thought you moved over there. You weren't getting ready to speak? No? Oh, okay. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Don't you want to read it all?
Don can read it.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? A lot of nice things happening out there. Thank you. Roll call vote, please.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Garrick?
Yes.
Strand?
Yes.
Grinberg?
Aye.
Mahoney?
Aye. Item 34, resolution authorizing the issuance of refunding improvement bonds, Series 2018D. Ken Costin to explain.
Yes, Commissioners, the City of Fargo is planning to issue refunding improvement bonds. These are special assessment bonds, as I just discussed a few minutes ago, in the estimated amount of about $43 million. And typically, on Mondays, we typically have sale day, and then that evening, you typically approve the bids on this. Terry has advised us of some things, unique market conditions and other strategies that we'd like to deploy, and I wanted to have her share with you how this procedure is different than what we normally do. We still issue the bonds, it's just using a little bit of different technique. So with that, I'll turn it over to Terry.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor and members of the commission, Terry Heaton with Springstead Incorporated, Municipal Advisor. And as Kent indicated, we're recommending a change, and part of it is $43 million. It's time to get cash in the door and sell the bonds. And we were going to schedule the sale, in fact, for tonight. But because of the 4th of July holiday, the underwriters we did a survey, and there just aren't enough of them in town to get enough bids to feel confident that you're going to get the lowest interest rate. And so then we looked at moving the sale to July 16th, and we also looked at the sale calendar, and I think everyone that has meetings the first and third Mondays are all doing the same thing. They're scrambling. They canceled this week. They've all pushed their sales to July 16th. So it's going to be an oversupply that day, and again, you won't get the best rate. So rather than delay it for another 2 weeks and have interest rate risk and also wait to have cash in the door, our firm is recommending a different approach, and that is to go just before the July 16th meeting. So we're beating the other sales. So we're recommending a sale on Wednesday, July 11th. Also going away from the Monday sale dates to a Wednesday and beating that. And our hope is that we come to a lower supply. You still get the cash in the door early, and it's just, we get a better response from the underwriters. And the difference is, as Ken indicated, we come to the city council that evening and get approval for the bids that are received that day, and we bring in the true interest rate, the recommendation for the lowest rate. How it would be handled in this case is we would still conduct the sale as a competitive sale, receive bids that morning, prepare the bid tabulation, and make a recommendation for the lowest bid. Instead of formally going to the city council or city commission that evening and asking it to be awarded, there would be a committee that would receive the low bid, and that would be made up of the mayor, the city auditor, and the city finance director. So the bid tabulation would be presented to these three, and they would act that day instead of the city commission, and then on the 16th, that information would be brought as information. And so the resolution tonight authorizes that process to take place instead of the typical process, so that you can sell the bonds on a day where we think there'll be a better supply and demand ratio for you.
Everybody understand that? Can I have a motion, please?
I would just like to, what's the downside? Is there any downside here on this?
Mr. Mayor, the members of the commission, I don't think there's any downside. What we want to do is get the best market for you, and so we're picking a day to when we think there's less supply. The only real difference is that you're accustomed to having the full commission award, and unless there's some hiccup, it would always be the lowest bid that day anyway. It's a bid, the lowest interest rate. So instead of formally having that vote, that award done by the city council, or city commission, it's delegated to these three. So it's those three confirming the low recommendation.
Mr. Chairman, I'm comfortable with that, but I'd like, when you three know, I'd like the full commission to know through an email so that we're fully apprised of this what you're going to be deliberating, and then I don't want to walk into a commission meeting and have it, I want to know in advance. So.
Fair. Nancy, we could tell them what's going on, right?
Yes.
If need be, we could have an emergency meeting if we had to, just to discuss that issue, or no?
You could have, you cannot make a decision outside of the public meeting.
Yeah,
But
okay.
we can be informed of the results. That's all I'm asking.
So you moved it?
I did.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Commissioner Strand?
Thank you, Mayor. This is a second, at least a second refinancing that I've seen in a couple of years. This is the second that's been special assessments, and this topic has surfaced in the past as well. But when we have a refunding, if we have it, if we have a savings, this is another topic for us to visit in our study of specials, because these savings, if they happen later on in time, don't necessarily go back to the property owners who were originally assessed. So as I understand it, it goes into the funds in general. So this is just another topic to have us study when we look at special assessments.
Pierre or Kent wanted to comment.
Actually, just as a point of clarification, Commissioner, this is a brand-new money issue. This is not a refinancing transaction, and I appreciate your comments about that, and that if that can be addressed by the committee, that'd be excellent.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Commissioner Garrick?
It's my understanding it's a state law, so I've already reached out to senators and representatives to address that at the next session. So it's not something we can fix, but the state can.
Any other discussion?
One last question is, are we going to see fewer of these opportunities down the road, or not fewer, but is the trend for higher interest rates coming at us for bonds?
There are a couple of things that have happened, and the new tax bill no longer allows advance refundings. So you've had a few of those, and now they can only be current refundings, so that has limited the pace of some of those opportunities to refinance. The other thing that is coming, yes, there are a lot of economists that are talking about, we've got 3 adjustments this year that are happening by the feds. And then we've also are looking at 28-19. They're showing projections of increases that they think are happening with the robust economy. We say that, and then we read about a bear economy too. So the economists all have their own projections, and I'm not an economist. We don't forecast rates, but I think the best thing is that a lot of folks that are bonding, like this bond issue, as you close in, lock in the rates, you've taken away the interest rate risk of rates continuing to climb.
John, they always tell us the rates are going to go up sometime. It's always, and we wait and wait, and that hasn't happened for a while. Any other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Grinberg? Grinberg?
Aye.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Strand?
Yes.
Garrick?
Yes.
Mahoney?
Aye. Number 35, you have my recommendation to appoint Commissioner Dave Pepcorn as deputy mayor. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Grinberg?
No, I mean aye.
Garrick?
Yes.
Strand?
Yes.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Mahoney?
Aye. And Dave, you've done a good job at that role, and you're doing real well in the public. Your speeches are getting better. You can't always say go Bison, but you have my recommendation or commission liaison assignments. Now, when I do this, I know all of you have your favorite ones, and it's very hard to get everybody exactly where they want to be. And so when this happens, I assume some of you are happy or unhappy with what happened, but I great thought into what your liaisons are. And I do appreciate that all of you work hard on your liaisons. You do good work in every one of your liaisons, and I think you're very much helpful to many of the departments in moving things forward and making the city of Fargo a progressive city. So I want to thank you for all your hard work in these assignments. You have my recommendation. Do you have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Commissioner Garrick?
I'd like to amend the motion to put me back on the airport authority, and then it's a point of just clarification. I'm wondering, why I was removed off of that. Me being the only pilot on this board, it would make sense that I would be on the airport authority.
Well, the recommendation as far as that is that you don't have to be a pilot to be an airport authority liaison, and you have some other assignments I've given you in regards to that. You gave me your top choices of 5, which I gave you all 5. also elected, we have a couple things going on in the airport area where I think the deputy mayor will serve that role very well.
Was
Is there a
that a motion?
second?
It was a motion, yep.
Pardon?
I made a motion to
Yep.
amend.
Is there a second? Hearing no second, the motion died for lack of a second. Any other discussion?
I'm just going to make a statement that when Commissioner Pepcorn, presuming this motion passes, which I think it will, look forward to his role in the airport authority. I just think the city of Fargo, the five of us, need to be a little more open-minded when it comes to the operations of the airport. It seems to me there is somewhat of an agenda, and so I'd like to see things done in a way that are a collaborative spirit, whether it's operations or a parking ramp. And I just thought it was important to share that.
Mr. Chair, can I make a quick comment too? I totally agree. I think the main thing is we're all on the same team. And I think the airport is a vital part of our economic growth. They're a key piece. And so we all have to be on the same team. We can't be separate. And I met with Sean earlier last week and voiced that. And I think we all need to work together, and I think we will.
Just to be clear, this isn't about a garage. This is really just working with the airport authority. We have a contract we haven't redone since 1965, and basically it's looking at that arrangement. We've already showed it to the airport authority. They've seen it. We've seen it. We're working cooperatively together to do that. To be transparent to the commission to see, there's nothing going to be hidden in that particular arrangement. I think the airport authority is working on a skyway, which they'll bring out recently or sometime soon. And the parking contract is going to be an RFP. So I think all the areas in the airport authority where there's been discussion, I think is moving along nicely. So I'm hopeful that this can continue to work in a positive fashion. Thank you for your comment. Roll call vote, please.
Strand?
Yes.
Grinberg?
Aye.
Garrick?
No.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Mahoney?
Aye. You have the resolution adopting rules and regulations relative to the operation of the agenda and conduct of city commission meetings. Nancy Morris to explain.
This is a resolution that was presented to you following the last election. The terms are the same as was approved previously, and it's just a standard format when there are new commissioners elected.
So these are the same rules we've had before. I think the commission has, since we have no newbies, John, as you comment, as we have all the same people, I assume you've read these and understand those. Can I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Commissioner Strand.
Thank you, Mayor. Nancy, maybe I can ask you this, is toward the end of that, the information we have where a member who's, with regard to reconsideration, where a member who's in a minority can vote after 28 days to reconsider. And then we have in item G, the ability to reconsider, describing how to reconsider something that's been heard in a public hearing. I'm just curious about the reconsideration avenues relative to if somebody's in a majority of the commission. Is that Robert's rules that dictates that? Or is it because it's not specifically spelled out here as I see it. You can reconsider after 28 days if you are in a minority of a vote. You can reconsider, we can have processes for reconsidering something that's been in a public hearing, but not everything's in a public hearing. So I'm just, and I know parliamentary
Actually, John, you brought this up during the year, and you really in the minority cannot bring it back. It's a majority that can bring it back, according to Robert's rules, right?
According to Robert's rules, so we defer to Robert's, then that's safe to assume?
Yes. And Nancy, do you want to clarify that and bring it back?
I would agree, but I can certainly take a look into that as to when can a majority member voting seek reconsideration of the motion.
And while we're at it, I wouldn't mind us looking at that 28 days for somebody who was in a minority. That's just not, I'm not sure that's in sync or parallels Robert's rules necessarily or not. I didn't know minority members.
So should we table for 2 weeks and look at it?
I would move that.
Is there a second?
Second.
If any of you have any suggestions, maybe look at that a little bit more closely, and then we could pass those suggestions to our next
I'd be happy to
meeting.
visit with you just with my
And
questions.
John, will you work with her on that?
Happy to.
Okay. Roll call vote, please.
Strand?
Yes.
Garrick?
Yes.
Grinberg?
Aye.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Mahoney?
Aye. Ken Costin to explain, State Water Commission request for cost reimbursement on FM diversion project.
Yes, Commissioners, there's two reimbursement requests. Item A is for the costs incurred on city-led projects for $521,819. And 38B is for costs totaling $567,000, or $567,145, related to the Oxbow portion of the diversion project. We'd seek your approval on both of those so we can submit for reimbursement.
Can I have a motion for A?
38A, move it.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call vote.
Grinberg?
Aye.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Strand?
Yes.
Garrick?
Yes.
Mahoney?
Aye. Item 38B,
So moved.
is there a second? Moved and seconded. Roll call vote.
Grinberg?
Aye.
Strand?
Yes.
Garrick?
Yes.
Pepcorn?
No.
Mahoney?
Aye. Item 39, request for pilot financing of proposed project located at 914, 918 15th Street North, explained by Jim Gilmore.
Good evening. This follows a policy that was adopted in 2010 by the City Commission that provided pilot incentives for new housing projects in the university mixed-use zoning districts. About eight projects have been done under this policy, however, none since 2016. So I included that policy for your information. The policy allows a pilot incentive up to 100% for 5 years, followed by 50% for 5 years. Our process is to bring this to you first for your kind of initial review to find out if you even want us to spend time working on the financial analysis and the development agreement. If you choose to go forward tonight, we would get the pro forma from the developer. We would send it to our financial advisor. They would pay the appropriate fee. The Finance Committee would then review that. There'd be a recommendation from Finance. Draft development agreement would be put together, and then we would later have a public hearing, and there would be public notice on the specific application. What we have tonight is, I think we have some photos of the building as usual. This doesn't always work. There are two homes on 15th Street. One's a 1930 house, 1,400 square feet. Another from 1905, 1,300 square feet. Both homes are, neither are very good condition on the inside. On the outside, they look fairly good, but on the inside, there's a lot of cracks in the ceilings. What's proposed is that the developer would take down the houses. They'd put up a 16-unit apartment building. That apartment building would be consistent with the University mixed-use zoning district, so there'd be no planning commission action needed on that. So the recommended motion, if you want to support us working on this, is listed there, would be to get the pro forma and send it to our city's financial advisors for review.
Can I have a motion, please?
I'll move.
Commissioner Pepcorn, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Discussion?
Jim, just a question, Mr. Chairman. Jim,
Grinberg?
this is or is not part of the policy that we updated here a year or so ago?
We did not review this specific policy when we looked at the overall pilot and economic development policies a year ago. This one was not reviewed.
Commissioner Garrick.
This kind of goes back to all incentives, but I was thinking about the ones that had passed earlier and the question being asked around the table of do incentives work? And I don't think anyone 20 years ago looking today said that they didn't work. I think we're asking the wrong question, though. The question should be, how long should we be doing them for? It may have been good policy 20 years ago to subsidize sprawl and give a 2-year home abatement for new homes. It may have been good policy to give apartments a 10-year pilot 10, 15 years ago. But again, we're asking the wrong question. How long should we be doing these things for? We've had commissioners say that they'll never vote for apartments to get incentives again, but it keeps happening. We keep looking at our policy, but nothing really changes. So I think the greater question that needs to be asked by not only the people on this board, but as a community is, how long do we harm other parts of Fargo to help some parts of Fargo? That's exactly what these incentives do. So going back to do they work? No one is arguing that they didn't work. What I'm saying is that with our laser focus, we're missing opportunities in Midtown, for example, or in South Fargo. We're going to talk about food trucks at some point here for just downtown, which is a bad policy. It should be for the entire city of Fargo. So we need to stop with the laser focus and ask the right questions.
One of the things your question, Jim, is to look at to it if it works for a pilot, if it qualifies for a pilot, with the cost and the development, if it works. Is that what you're asking for now?
Yeah, is to just move forward with it. Also, as we're looking at our TIF policy, I did bring this to tax exempt committee last week and pointed this out. So as we review this with the school district and county, our intent is to include this in that final TIF review.
Any other discussion? Mr. Strand.
Thank you. I have just a few questions. What feedback or input or engagement was there with the neighborhood association with this project?
There's been none at this point. We want to find out tonight if you want to move forward with it, and there'll be a public hearing later where they'd have the opportunity. The neighborhood was involved as part of the neighborhood planning process when this particular property was zoned university mixed use, so it would allow this property by right.
So the neighborhood engagement would happen only if the pilot is being explored with the permission of the board, commission, or?
Yeah, they would have an opportunity to comment at that public hearing.
I would guess the neighbors probably have, that whole neighborhood's at risk. You know, and I just want us to not always constantly be reaching out to them proactively about things coming their way, because we're hearing it all the time, and it's just one of my concerns.
Is it zoned for apartment, John?
It's zoned for the university of mixed use. Actually, the zoning, the minimum zoning on this now requires at least 3 units per lot. So if you're going to redevelop this, you need to put in at least 6 new units. That was the decision when the university mixed use zoning was put in place, is to require higher density housing in this particular portion of the Roosevelt neighborhood.
And if I might continue, with regard to the objectives of pilots, payments in lieu of taxes for university mixed use, one of the original or earlier criteria is to provide affordable housing or opportunities. Is that a component of this project?
It is not of this project. What that policy says is it needs to meet at least one of those objectives. It does not meet that particular objective.
So the only objective there I see that maybe could conceivably work would be blight removal?
I think there are several I think, you know, to encourage private development in the area, to remove some blighted costs, to offset the increased costs, you know, to contribute to the implementation of that. So I think the last 3, it meets those 3 objectives. It's looking very quickly. The developer is here if you have any specific questions about what is planned.
Any other questions? Questions of the developers? Commissioner Strand?
I do. You know, our policies clarify that pilots are not intended to be viewed as entitlements. And I know Commissioner Gehrig is routinely asking the but-for question. Would this project happen without the incentive or not?
That's what our financial advisor will look at. They will look at the business plan, look at the return on investment with and without the incentive, and make a recommendation to our finance committee.
Well, Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Grunberg.
Commissioner Strand's asking some great questions, and it's a little awkward in the approach. You know, so, you know, depending what the decision here tonight is, you know, I think we need to go back and relook at the process if we're going to use this. So and I realize there's some time and maybe some expense involved to validate the but-for or not validate the but-for, but we're going to get this back again. So it's just a unique way of coming in and seeing, you know, what the sentiment of the commission is before they go through the exhaustive effort of providing that information. So you can go either way on that, I guess, but I'm inclined to support it, but I still have a lot of questions when it comes back when I see the data.
Do you mind if I speak a little bit? Yeah, you can pass these around. So this property is 2 single-family rentals currently, formerly rentals, now they're vacant. They formerly rented for $1,300 and $1,325 as single-family homes to students at NDSU. Based on those rental rates, based on the bedroom counts, and based on the utilities being a responsibility of the tenant, what we're adding here is 16 new units with tuck-under garages, so we won't have detached garages. We're also adding 4 efficiencies, 10 one-bedrooms, and a couple 2-bedrooms. And the average rental range will be ranging on that scale, 800, 900, and 1,100. So from an annual median income standpoint as well, when you look at Fargo's annual median income and when you look at 60 or 80% of the annual median income, there are unit types within this structure that would qualify naturally. So it'd be, from my standpoint, naturally affordable, adding density in an area that was designated for UMU for a purpose. And if these single-family homes that have been rentals for many years aren't redeveloped, or I should say, if they aren't given a pilot in order to redevelop them because the project costs are way too high, the applicant will either maintain them as rentals or sell them. So that's kind of the general summary, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
So I'm a little unclear, Commissioner Grinberg. This is really what sometimes the commission is asked. Let's look if it qualifies for a pilot. The costs are out there, the but-for need guest is there, everything is there. Both the developer and we in the city and the school and the county get to see it and see what it comes out before it comes back to this place for a recommendation for a pilot. So it's really doing that third-party analysis of does this make sense. I think what Jim Gilmore is asking is, should this go to that analysis? You know what you've got there now, which is blight. Do you want to replace it with apartments, which has been infill, which we've talked about? And then it'll come back. If the developer's making too much money on it, it won't be a pilot. If the developer can't make it without a pilot. And I assume, Austin, you'd say before us, I can't do this project unless I get a pilot, if the analysis comes back that.
Yeah, the challenge with projects like this is that you have the input cost of the existing family homes that are in poor condition, so the cost to renovate them as existing structures is difficult. And then when you go to redevelop the site, when you get into demolition, asbestos abatement, and site work, which we've talked about before, we get to a point where we're spending 120 grand a unit on apartments that in South Fargo or in West Fargo should cost 100,000 a unit. So that's the difficult part, is that if there isn't a real estate tax abatement in areas like this, especially infill areas, at least temporarily, it's almost impossible to make them work. And the argument I always have with Tony is that we're not costing taxpayers money. I know we disagree on that, but the taxable assessed value by year 10 for something that wouldn't happen otherwise, the present value of that is massive, so.
Commissioner Gary.
That's the point, though, because it will happen. Maybe you're not going to do it. Someone else might. That's the
It might
market.
happen
You had your
20
chance. Hold on,
years.
hold on. We don't know that, right? So someone could come in and develop that area. They do it all the time. But the point is you could build this in South Fargo. You could. The vacancy rate there is about 11%, sometimes higher, depending where you're at. Up at NDSU, the vacancy rate is much lower. That's why you want to develop there, because you want to have it full all the time. I actually own apartments close to NDSU. They have never been vacant. I own other ones that are vacant. So, yeah, you can make the case, and that's fine. And that's what your job is to do at this point if you're asking for this tax abatement. But the reality is, there's a reason that you want this property, and that's to develop it. And if you don't want to, by all means, sell it. That's what the market is. We've been doing these things for far too long, and we have plenty of development happening.
Okay, any other discussion? We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Grinberg?
Aye.
Strand?
No.
Gehrig?
No.
Mahoney?
Aye. Item 40, second reading and final adoption ordinance amending sections 180304, 180308, and enacting section 180318, article 1803, chapter 18 of the Fargo Municipal Code. To relay or carrying to the use and care of the streets and sidewalks, first reading, continued first meeting. Nicole Crutchfield to explain.
Yes, good evening. So this has been on, obviously it was pulled off consent agenda, but we have been receiving some feedback from the public, both in support and against, and so we would like to ask for continuation for 2 weeks as we more fully vet out that public comment and then potentially advise amendments to the policy that's been, the pilot policy that's been presented to you such far, if you will.
Nicole, do we have anybody present tonight who wants to speak to this motion at this time, or you want to do a continuing?
there
If there are
might
people
be.
tonight expecting to speak or not?
There might be. I received a lot of calls today, and both from the paper and from the press. And so I was trying to clarify with the press that I am asking for a continuation, but based on the way it was advertised 2 weeks ago, there might be people here that are wanting
And then are you going to have a public hearing with those people who want to talk, or a meeting
Yeah.
at some point?
Yeah,
You will?
Yes.
Okay, so they wouldn't need to speak tonight?
they would not. And maybe just the pros and cons, I listed them quite real quickly here from what I'm hearing, but make sure we're all talking about the same thing. But basically, mobile food vendors are permitted today to be on private property, so we're not asking the change to get their health license. Their health license would still be the same. We'd like to test this summer, if, with summer that's left, is a temporary, to kind of test the policy to see if people can, sell from parking spaces on the street in a very limited, and based on some public comment, we have already changed the map that's been in your packet previously to add a little bit further buffer, if you will, from the active zones of our downtown. And based on those comments, we've amended a little bit. So this map is new to you tonight.
Is there anybody here tonight who wanted to speak to this? Just, I know some people may have come to just talk to this. Is it okay with the commission? Don't mind? See, I knew you were going to talk sometime, Joe.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Joe Burgum. I live at 514 10th Avenue South. I currently run one of the food truck parks in downtown Fargo at 409 Broadway. I think some of the thoughts around this and having been a part of the downtown task force meetings and seeing staff work on this is it is a pilot. So I definitely commend the city staff for working on this iteratively. I think the idea with this is that there's an opportunity to test something and see, does it work, does it fit? I know some food truck operators say, hey, our summer is full, we're not going to use this. That being said, I think even if one food truck does apply for this permit, there's something we can learn internally from a city processing standpoint in terms of how do we deal with permits, how do we deal with complaints, and so forth. We have many, many inquiries of people that are choosing to be downtown with food trucks but need to be on private property by law. In contrast to that, if you have a cart, you can be on the sidewalk. So there is a bit of discontinuity with Section 18 of the code that addresses mobile food vending, where if you're out at bar close, it's amazing to see the food carts out. And there are entrepreneurs that are choosing to capitalize and bring that energy to downtown Fargo in the evening, but if you're in a food truck, you're not allowed to park on the street right now. You have to be on private property. So I hope in the next 2 weeks some of the questions can be addressed and the pilot can roll forward. It definitely brings an energy to the community, and my hope is that it's beyond just downtown. I think there's many parts of Fargo that would enjoy having access to a food truck, if so available.
Thank you. Randy, did you want to make a comment?
Can we change the name of that, by the way? Pilot project? I don't like that.
You said you're a pilot. I could like that.
Good evening, Commissioners, Mayor. I'm Randy Thorson. I just soon wait to see what Nicole comes up with. We have talked with her. We've talked about the boundaries, the restrictions, why it's important. We already have restaurants there. Some of the success, I think, of food trucks, and I don't run a food truck, but it would seem to me that their success really comes with partnering with establishments, liquor establishments. We see that with Junkyard in Moorhead. They do they're great brewers, and they do a good job. And so I think we have to take a look at that as well. If there's going to be some partnering that goes on private property in addition to some of the streets in the downtown area. One of the other thoughts we had too, if you take a look at our particular street of NP Avenue, Warren and I have 5 restaurants in and around First Avenue and NP Avenue, and you're talking a block away, and does that mean you can have 4 trucks on one side of MP, 4 trucks on another, and then you're on Fifth with, I mean, you know, are you going to have 8, 10, 12 trucks in an area? So we'd like to take a look at that and see what restrictions are going to be, how long they can park in those particular areas, what time of the day. How does that affect parking in the downtown area as well? So I think there's some things for us to discuss with Nicole, and, you know, just giving us 2 weeks. We weren't aware of this until we were contacted by the forum, and then started looking into it. So if we could have 2 weeks, that'd be great.
Very good.
Thanks.
Any other public comment? Not, we'll close public hearing. Can I have a continuance motion, please?
So moved. Second?
Roll call vote.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Gruenberg?
Aye.
Strand?
Yes.
Garrick?
Yes.
Mahoney?
Aye. Is there any other business to be held at the commission meeting? Hearing none, move for adjournment.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.